So the centrists are coming. Okay, the centrists are coming out of the woodworks in spades, coming out to dull down all of our expectations, trying to let us know it's all impossible, trying to make sure that we all, stop trying to advance Medicare for all. It's just too complicated. It's just too expensive. It's just do this. It's just do that. It's always some other bullshit, right? And then, you've got these people. We had a lady on here not too long ago talking about election integrity that was a true vote blue sycophant. And she's out there running around saying she hopes that Bernie doesn't run because Bernie's only out to tear down the Democratic Party. And, and I'm just thinking to myself, my God, the left thinks Bernie's sheepdogging him in. The centrists think that he's like totally screwing the party. I mean, the poor guy can't buy a break, can he? But in any event, all these friggin', centrists are pouring out of the woodworks, and they are here to make sure you absolutely have no hope and prayer that any good thing will happen. They're all here to remind you how impractical it is to, in any way, shape, or form, dream a better dream. Stop talking about these other people. They're not going to give you what you need. They're not useful. They're this, bullshit. And I look and I say to myself, what in God's name? And it's not the candidates alone. It's the party operatives. It's the media. It's the hit pieces constantly. It's every step along the way. Sherrod Brown. Does anybody remember Sherrod Brown being heralded as the great, hope of the progressive movement? Sherrod Brown's out there saying Medicare for all is not practical. Well, tell that to my freaking aching body. Tell that to my children. Tell that to your children. They say, well, it's an imperfect system. Well, guess what? Imperfect systems can be tweaked. They can be tweaked. They're tweaked constantly. Why is this something new? Why is it that, Medicare for all is just, it's a little off. Well, let me tell you something. Coming from an IT background, it takes about 3 or 4 keystrokes to alter the date of eligibility in a system. Now, all of a sudden, instead of saying, however, 65, 55, whatever, now all of a sudden you're saying, hey, man, how about from birth? Done. Okay. That's practical, man. That's called saving a lot of IT dollars. Not that we need to save money, but just for the idiot savants that think we do. Okay, those people over there, those folks over there that spend a lifetime trying to trick us into believing we can't have nice things. Now, I want to talk to you all about why this matters. So one of our volunteers came to me today, and they were having an epiphany. And I love when our volunteers have epiphanies because these are really, really important epiphanies that we tend to bring out here at Real Progressives. And he said, wait a minute, hold on. If you're telling me that the economy can only have money poured into it 3 different ways, 1, by government spending, 2, by private banks lending us debt, more debt, and even more debt, or 3, through trade, being an exporter, and they're cutting off, they're trying to say we can't afford it at the federal level. It sounds to me like this is a trick to get us all deeper into private debt. I was like, son of a bitch, I think you found it. You figured out the game of neoliberalism. That's the game. They like markets. Why do they like markets? Because that means that we have to find private ways to get into debt to be able to afford whatever it is that's out there. And he's like, man, I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. This is going to keep me up all night now that I realize this. And I'm like, welcome to the war. This is neoliberalism. This is what the centrist Democrats champion. Now, we all know that quote unquote socialism, capitalism, etc., is a spectrum. It is. It's a spectrum. And that spectrum, you're always at war. Capital and labor are always at war. And there's always some place on the spectrum, who's winning, who's losing. It's never all or nothing. It's never a firm cut, and that's that. It never has been and never will be. It's going to always be some sort of a tug of war between labor and capital. Okay. And no matter how much socialism we're able to eke into the system, these people are here to let us know you can call it whatever you want. Social spending is not socialism. Okay. And they're going to make it seem that it's all absolutely impossible, because when we talk about corporate Democrats, and we talk about Wall Street Democrats, and we talk about Hillary, show us the transcripts. Show us where the money's coming from. Show us why they want to hear you talk. And when you hear Hillary up there saying, it's all impossible, it's pie in the sky, how are you going to pay for it, Bernie? And you see this repetitive thing coming around. This is their kill switch. This is their go-to move. And so, yes, Fidel, exactly. But this is their go-to move. Now, I'm going to tell you, out there in the hard lands, man, out there in the harsh reality where we're running around with people that don't want to learn anything, I stumbled onto a woman, and she was in our inbox. And I'm going to read this to you because, quite frankly, I feel it's shameful. I'm not going to tell you her name because the intent is not to shame her. The intent is to make you all realize exactly what the hell we're going through. And so you understand exactly how bad this stuff is. I don't think people really do realize how bad this stuff is. And, you know, we were talking with a lady, and we were trying to talk to her about paying for these plans and so forth. And her response to us literally was, that sounds, if it takes that much effort, it's got to be a scam. So here, I'm just going to read it verbatim. And she commented on my live stream last night, and she goes, what's an MMT? All right, fair enough. Yeah, you know, it's a question we can answer 7 days a week, 24/7. And one of the volunteers in our inbox answered it and said, you know, basically, hey, here's a description. And they sent him one of my posts that breaks it down step by step. And believe me, when I say this, I can be illogical at times, but this post was pretty clear. It's pretty easy. Her response is, yeah, no clue. And the individual came back and said, did you have time to read what I just posted? Her response was, it makes no sense. And she came back and she said, our team says, it's the way a country that creates its own currency operates fiscally, how our government spends, why it taxes. Specifically, what isn't making sense? Her response, the whole thing. So we sent her Stephen Hale's explainer, what is modern monetary theory? Her response, whatever Bernie wants to do is fine with me. Then I started catching on to this thing was going on. So I jumped in and I said, wouldn't it be good to understand what's going on? And she says, I don't think I can. So our volunteer came back in and said, yes, Bernie understands MMT. Dr. Stephanie Kelton, who teaches macroeconomics, is on his institute and worked with him on the 2016 campaign. And I sent the 10 things Kelton wants you to know. So try this short video. And I said, she's Bernie Sanders' top economic advisor. Her response, this is no joke, this is your centrist Democrat. You can say you're burners, but this is what we're dealing with. No thanks. If I have to try that hard, it must be a scam. Pass. It must be a scam. Pass. I don't know about you all, but if that's our movement, we are in deep freaking trouble. I'm talking metric tons of cow manure kind of trouble. If that's the kind of people we've got to count on to advance anything, right? To advance Medicare for all, to advance a New Deal, to advance anything, climate change stuff, you name it. And so as we're sitting there looking at this, Again, all the talk shows, CNN, MSNBC, all of them coming out nonstop with hit piece after hit piece. All of the news media, all of the publications, written and media, video media, podcasts, you name it. They're all coming out with hit pieces on why we can't afford stuff. And so naturally, us MMTers, come around and we're like, well, wait a minute, guys, even the Republicans know this stuff. I mean, when you got tricky Dick Cheney sitting there saying, Paul, Reagan proved that deficits don't matter. We won the midterm elections. This is our due. Dick freaking Darth Vader Cheney. Okay. This right here is Dick Cheney saying this stuff. All right. Now, the response, because this is what the centrist Democrats do, the response, of course, is, well, if the Republicans did it, it must be bad. Well, of course, the Republicans use it for all the wrong reasons. They don't use things to serve the people. They use things to serve wealth. So you think, well, the Democrats have to be opposite of that, right? Naturally, the Democrats can't possibly be even worse or equal or whatever. But no, they really can. And they prove it on a day-to-day basis. Now, I'm not talking about progressive. Let's be real clear here. We're talking about the moderate. We're talking about the folks who can't be bothered to learn, because if it's too tough to go beyond one sentence, it has to be a scam. Okay. That level of tomfoolery, buffoonery, whatever, is what stands between us and survival. That's bad. That's survival. We're not talking about any grandiose things. We're talking about base survival. So I'm going to put the pussy hat meme up here real quick. I'm going to read this article to you. This article is, I think, worth its weight in gold. And I love the picture. Our own Cara Emanuel made this, so it's kind of funny. But I'm going to read this. It's a Common Dreams article. And I'll make sure that the link is in the chat here momentarily. And you'll have to forgive me for not being able to show this while it's going on. But I'm going to put the link in here. So there it's in the chat. And here we go. We're just going to read it. Beware the moderate Democrat, why the centrist extremists are an incredibly dangerous political animal. The moderate. Such a soothing political word. It conjures up a reasonable, considerate person who seeks the middle ground between ideological extremists, works well with others, crosses the aisle to make good policy, knows how to win incremental change rather than issuing jarring proclamations that jump too far ahead of the electorate. And moderate is pragmatic, gets things done, and doesn't let the perfect become the enemy of good. Oh, in these troubled times, aren't such moderates, beloved as they are by right-wingers like Brett Stevens, desperately needed? Get ready to hear more and more of that from mainstream media pundits as the Democratic Party moves towards the kind of progressive populism put forward by Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wing of the party. We'll be asked by centrist journalists to take a careful look at more reasonable moderates like Gillibrand, McAuliffe, Bloomberg, Biden, Booker, Landrieu, and many, many more. But what is the substance of all this centrism and moderation? First and foremost, these moderates are united by their unwillingness to take on Wall Street. And because of that unwillingness, they are unable to confront the defining problem of our era, runaway inequality. They cannot face up to the fact that the wages of the average worker have been stagnant for an entire generation. Meanwhile, the pay gap between the top 100 CEOs and the average worker has risen from 40 to 1 in 1980 to an obscene 800 to 1 today. The centrists run away from this problem in large part because they are a desperate race to win the very first primary, the fundraising primary. And it is no secret that victory goes to the candidate who garners the most financial support from Wall Street corporate Democrats. Rather than discussing runaway inequality and ways to ameliorate it through Medicare for all, free higher education, higher taxes on the super rich, these moderates will instead stress enhancing opportunity, removing barriers to race and gender advancement. Rather than confronting billionaire oligarchs that want to partner with business and in some vague way tame their excesses while also building a robust and fair economy with opportunity for all. No conflict needed, no diatribes against the billionaire class. Hear the melodious tones of moderation. From this coziness with Wall Street flows the trope about being socially liberal and fiscally conservative. The moderate centrists and their Wall Street donors support LGBTQ rights, the advancement of women in business, immigration and criminal justice reform, gun control, and abortion rights. At the same time, they believe the entire progressive runaway inequality platform is an affront to economic reason. High taxes on the rich will discourage initiative and innovation. Single-payer health care and free higher education will bankrupt the country. Breaking up the big banks will cripple investment and jobs. Of course, the moderates must ignore the reams of data from all over the world that show that these progressive reforms would reduce inequality and enhance the well-being of nearly everyone, though it is true that reducing inequality would harm, at least to some extent, the precious privileges of the very few. The super rich would have to pay more. They would no longer be able to financially strip mine the rest of us through wasteful stock buybacks. The billions would be reduced a bit. But most alarming would be their deflated egos. No longer could they bask in the false narrative that what is so very good for them is good for all of us. But do moderates represent anyone other than Wall Street donors? Is there a mass base for the kind of moderation they are putting forward? Let's take a look at the eye-popping survey of the 2016 election and put together the voter survey group, which polled 8,000 Americans, a very large sample, which is 8 to 15 times larger than most of the surveys we usually see in the news. A study of these voters showed that they could be divided into 4 major groups. See Drutman. Political divisions in 2016 and beyond. And let's go ahead and get me on the screen here so that you don't have to stare at the pussy hat anymore. Let's take a look at the eye-popping data from the 2016 presidential election put together by the voter survey group, which polled 8,000 Americans, a very large sample, which is 8 to 15 times larger than the most of the surveys we usually see in the news. A study of these voters showed that they could be divided into 4 major groups. See Lee Drutman, Political Divisions in 2016 and Beyond. Note the title names used below are mine, not his. The first group, left populists, are those who are both social and economic progressives. They support immigration, women and minority equality, LGBTQ rights, and immigration. They also worry about rising inequality and support proposals that would attack it. The second group, nativist populists, also worry about rising inequality and support proposals that attack it, but they are more comfortable with traditional gender roles, have qualms about abortion, see immigration as a problem, and are not particularly supportive of LGBTQ rights. The third are the arch conservatives. They are not interested in reversing economic inequality or social inequality. And finally, we have the socially liberal fiscal conservatives. This is the home base for the moderate politician who are wooing Wall Street and see themselves as the sensible alternatives to the extremist populists. So more or less, that's who we are. If the electorate were divided equally among these 4 groups, the moderates might have an argument. The facts tell an entirely different story. Left populists account for 44.6% of the electorate, according to this study. 28.9% are native populists. Arch conservatives account for 22.7%, and that leaves a minuscule 3.8% for the socially liberal fiscal conservatives. And folks, I could read on, and I will, but I want to get back to this here. So this is a really big deal. And I think that it's one of those things that we as a movement don't pay enough attention to. Not only is this defeatist narrative of the centrist, the moderate Democrat, corrosive to our own health, it's not in lockstep with anyone. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody wants this moderation bullshit. And I'm not telling you that we've got to run out there and burn things down and stuff, because that's absolutely jackfoolery. It's stupid. There's no need for it. But there is an understanding that we should have, and that is that we can afford every bit of these programs. We can afford it, and we can do it now. This is obviously known, and if it's not known, stick around. We'll explain it to you. But what we've got is nonstop the people, and this is where it falls on our shoulders. This is where it's our problem. People rush to support Tulsi. People rush to support Bernie. People rush to support some odd candidate. But they fail to lay the groundwork, expecting the candidate to do all the heavy lifting. They fail to lay the groundwork for why massive programs are very doable, very needed, and can be afforded without any problem whatsoever. They're just too busy going, I love Tulsi, I love Bernie, I love Jill, vote for Jill, I love this, I love that. Now, you all may find that to be a valuable trait. I'm of the camp that I want to make sure that all these people understand, regardless of who they're voting for, that we can afford it and to stop lying. I don't end up caring, because think about this. If the cat's out of the bag, these milquetoast moderates have nothing whatsoever that they can do other than watch us steamroll right through with a progressive agenda. But because we don't take the time to force that narrative to its fullness, we're too busy rushing out there to put our fist in the air talking about the latest candidate that we're in love with. We fail the most basic test because no one knew how to answer Hillary. They were still busy saying, well, if we reduce spending here and we raise taxes there, we'll be able to afford this program that Bernie put forward. None of them. And I mean, I can still remember it like it was yesterday. Bernie put forward $33 trillion in new spending. $33 trillion. He only offered up $19 trillion in new taxes. That's a gap. That's a big gap. That's $14 trillion gap from 19 to 33 trillion. Where's that $14 trillion coming from? Well, if you didn't do the work, if you failed the econ, if you refused to listen, well, poor Bernie was out there on an island sitting there kicking stones trying to explain how he was going to afford his programs because his own activists refused to do the homework. They refused to dial in. They refused to care. They refused to be good supporters of Bernie Sanders. They instead were busy going, Bernie, I feel the burn. But they weren't doing the hard work. And that was understanding the gap, that deficit spending that he was putting out there. And because so few cared, and so few didn't learn the maths that it takes to show how that worked, Hillary was able to make a point. She was able to score points. It's all pie in the sky, you basement dwellers. It sounds cute in theory, guys. Pat, pat, pat. Well, let me tell you, honest to God, it's not only doable, it's downright responsible. It's downright responsible. And, I'm going to send this up here. This is Scott Fulweiler. This is a great tweet he put out there. And he goes, so many who fear MMT, and for those of you who don't know what MMT is, MMT stands for modern monetary theory. It is just a hyper-accurate description of how federal finance works. If you hear some long, crazy nonsense about it sounds good in theory or some derogatory thing, just know that the person saying it's probably got their ass up their friggin' mouth and just huffing fumes because they're completely off. Okay. But this right here says, so many who fear MMT don't recognize the GOP for 40 years has already been doing policy as if they understood MMT on deficits. Supply side economics and wars didn't create their own revenues, but GOP still got everything they wanted because MMT is right about monetary sovereignty. Do you understand that this is the GOP literally beating the snot out of us, whipping our ass from left to right and back around again? And people say, we're going to take down the establishment, man. We're going to beat them, man. And it's just over the top. And look, Tricky Dick Cheney. Once again, let's show Tricky Dick. They knew this stuff. They knew this stuff. But when we talk about it, we don't get people having a real legitimate conversation. They just start talking about fiscal responsibility and, well, it's going to take a Democrat to bring about some fiscal responsibility, blah, blah, blah. They never, ever, ever explain because they don't understand and they don't want to understand. And that's going back to that lady. Let me read it again. Hey, here it is. And she says, no thanks. If I have to try that hard, it must be a scam. Hard pass. That is pretty disgusting, is it not? I mean, seriously, let's call a spade a spade. If it takes that much work, it's got to be a scam. You want to know why you're not going to get health care? You want to know why your kids aren't going to have a planet to live on? You want to know why you're going to be hanging from the rafters in your basement someday because of student debt? Or your kid will be because they can't get out of it? Let me read her statement again, see if this rings a bell. No thanks. If I have to try that hard, it must be a scam. Hard pass. What do you think about that? I'm serious. What do you think about that? What do you think about that? Does that make you feel good? Does that make you want to embrace? It makes no sense. So I talked to Warren Mosler a little bit, and he reminded me the other day that one of the most slick ways of explaining some of this stuff looks a little like this. He says, all state spending can be thought of as printing money and taxing as unprinting money. And, if you think about what the Fed said, it's a pretty slick statement right here too. As the sole manufacturer of dollars whose debt is denominated in dollars, the U.S. government can never become insolvent. Folks, never become insolvent. Not sometimes, never become insolvent, i.e., unable to pay its bills. In this sense, the government is not dependent on credit markets. So I don't care about our credit rating. Do you understand? I don't care about our credit rating. I don't care about any of that shit. I don't care about the World Reserve Bank or World Reserve Currency or, the petro anything. I don't care. Neither should you, unless you just want to hang out with Alex Jones and do the secret handshake. If your goal is to hang out with Alex Jones and do the secret handshake, then okay, worry about the petrodollar and all that other nonsense. If you actually want to be somebody getting things done, then don't listen to Alex Jones anymore. Okay? So this right here is pretty straight up, man. The government is not dependent on credit markets to remain operational. Moreover, there will always, folks, the word always is pretty extreme, right? There will always be a market for U.S. government debt at home because the U.S. government has the only means of creating risk-free. What does risk-free mean? I don't know. Risk-free means risk-free, right? Dollar-denominated assets. So, I bring it back and I say to myself, there are a lot of people that just plug in. They got their little remote control in hand. They go, oh. And they just sit there and listen to Rachel Maddow talking about Russia, talking about whatever else. They watch the pundits on CNN. They listen to all the jibber jabber on all these other stations. And ultimately, they are swept away with the pragmatism. And then the inevitable comes. What do you want, Trump? That's the shutdown argument. What do you want, Trump? So you're stuck in this either or scenario. Either you vote for a loser, either you support worthlessness, either you go with the milky centrist that's doing nothing but fattening Wall Street, or what do you want, Trump? That's it. Now, Nick Branya of Movement for a People's Party did a video the other day. And in his video, he spoke about how the fact that if progressives make any progress within the party, the longtime party people, the true vote blue, no matter who party folks, have the ability to change the rules at a moment's notice. They don't require anything. They can just change the rules. And unfortunately, centrists and Wall Street run that party, period. This is not, dear God, it's not up for debate. Please don't insult my intelligence and try and pretend like this is something that's debatable. It's simply not debatable. And you ask yourself, well, what choices do we have then, right? And I bring it back to what I've been saying all along. It's going to require us, we the people, teaching each other. Because look, I want you to see this tweet real quick, just to put a point on it, right? This is Black Socialists of America. And he's like, everyone, both inside and outside of the left, sees right through this clown, correct? We don't even need to spend any energy on this, right? I hate to break it to y'all, but there are people out there that are saying Cory Booker and Kamala Harris are progressives. They are. They are doing that. I don't know how you plan to counter that narrative, okay? Because most people haven't bothered to do the homework. They haven't. They just haven't. But it all comes back to the economic message. Because Wall Street is not there for identity politics. Wall Street is there to make money, to make profit. They're not there for equality. They're not there for anything other than profit. And the Democratic centrists, the moderates, the fiscally conservative, socially liberal, the enlightened ones that don't know, well, they do understand economics. They understand destroying people, all in the name of Wall Street. Okay. We'll give a few trinkets, make them feel good. But the reality is we are bought and sold. We are bought and sold, man. Bought and paid for. So the people must understand what's happening. Because if we allow them to believe for a minute that it's okay to do that, it won't matter what candidate's up there. We're going to get stuck with this shit more and more. And it's going to continue. And it's going to get worse. Now, we talked, this is the funny thing, we talked about having 12 years to get shit right with the environment. A centrist is going to serve Wall Street. They have no interest whatsoever in actually serving the environment. They're already trying to downplay that as well. The people are not educated enough on the basics that the country can afford to do these things, period. They've been convinced that every program has to be paid for with a tax hike or a cut, which is preposterous if you have the slightest bit of economic understanding of a sovereign. There were no cuts made. There were no tax increases for the military. Please don't insult my intelligence and pretend we need them for Medicare for all, when we could actually probably reduce taxes for Medicare for all. How funny is that? When you understand economics, instead of just suckling at the teat of your political party of choice, you stop saying stupid things and you start entertaining smart things and understanding the term deflationary and understanding the fact that by migrating everything to a single source, that it's going to reduce massive amounts of economic activity. And it's going to, in the end, be a more deflationary move. So reducing taxes, not increasing them, because there's no need to pay for the program. That's why we don't do it at the state level, California. That's why we don't do it at the state level, other states. That's why we do it at the federal level, because the currency issuer can never go broke. And we're getting nonsense about Venezuela. Oh my God, look at Venezuela. I feel very, very bad for the people of Venezuela. The United States has done a lot of putting its finger in the mix and really stirring the pot. As things keep coming out about this prop they've got down there that they're trying to claim as the rightful president now. Whether you like Maduro or not is irrelevant. We have done more neoliberal stuff trying to create markets, trying to keep control of markets, keep control of resources, keep the pipeline flowing, keep fattening investment, keep Wall Street happy, keep multinationals happy, keep money markets happy, expand investment opportunities to make investors happy. This is all more milquetoast, moderate, centrist bullshit that is really demonic because, and this is the real clincher, our friend said, and I'll repeat, no thanks if I have to try that hard, it must be a scam, pass. But she can understand, shouldn't women have this or shouldn't young children have that? And they give you this little dink and dunk. This little tiny thing. But they said this. Don't you feel bad for them? Well, of course we do. Let's serve the people correctly. Let's make it so we don't have these problems. You know, MMT, I'm going to say this here. This is from Warren Mosler. Oh, well, I don't have it up here. Shoot. Well, Warren Mosler basically said, we're the only ones that are trying to attack the problem at the root. We're not attacking it post-distribution. We're attacking it pre-distribution. We're trying to make sure that instead of trying to find ways of fixing inequality after the money is spent, we're trying to fix it in the beginning where it's spent, so it's spent on the people. But people really will not invest in understanding this. So the centrists, doing what they always do, trying to appear pragmatic, trying to appear as the great philosophers, bridging the divide, being the adults in the room, will siphon away those people who feel like understanding how this works is too hard. It must be a scam hard pass. And they'll just get swept right into the neoliberal cesspool. And that, my friends, is how the cookie crumbles. It doesn't do any good just to run around screaming for your candidate right now. First of all, it's way too early. But second of all, the people don't understand. And we don't have time. We don't have the luxury of kicking it a few more election cycles. We don't have the luxury of pretending this is not a near and present danger. We don't have the luxury if we want to survive as a species. I'm sorry that that will offend some people. And it will. And I'm okay with that. Because the truth usually is sucky. Usually it's painful, even if it's easy. You know, at the end of January, there was a bunch of people running around doing sessions on a federal job guarantee. Now, I want you to understand that's a big part of the Green New Deal. And on paper, it looks like a lot of work, man. Oh my God, where are you going to come up with the money for that? May I suggest you all remember that the United States government had no problem passing TARP, had no problem passing all kinds of ways of bailing out banks, bailing out institutions. But the people never got a break, did they? It was never an issue of whether we had the money to do those things. Because what they did was they fattened the financial institutions, left us destitute to rebuild from garbage. Many of us still suffering. And that, my friends, is your milquetoast centrists. That's hope and change. I'm tired, and you should probably be too if you're really serious about changing the world. I'm tired of constantly feeling like I've got to keep running, like the axe is just that close. It's like, I feel it like, chopping my top knot off, chopping my, my tail end off. I've got a flat ass. I already had a flat ass, but now I have a real flat ass because that axe just keeps coming closer and closer. But that job guarantee satisfies a couple major things. Let's go back to the great financial crisis when we were vetting 1 million jobs a month. Anybody that wanted a job or needed a job would have had a living wage, would have had benefits, and would have stood a chance to survive without going completely in the tank. And because the job guarantee serves as an automatic stabilizer, the economy would not have tanked either, not as much. And so you have to ask yourself, why won't they do this? Why won't we get behind it? Why don't people understand this? Why are they talking about a UBI? Guys, money is the easiest thing in the world to come up with. They could just spend that shit out there and it's no problem. But if there's not the productive capacity to support the expenditure, then it becomes wildly inflationary. Now the big bad inflation you are concerned about comes into play. But when you have a federal job guarantee where you're pegging the economy to labor, you've not only stabilized the economy, you've stabilized the little people by spending at the bottom. You have started to take a huge chunk out of income inequality. You've started to make it so that those people who are perpetually destitute are no longer destitute. You're ending generational poverty in one fell swoop. Now, is this the silver bullet to ending income and wealth inequality? No. There's more work that has to be done. But these centrists are not going to let us get there until we demand it. And by demand it, we can't just be angry. We've got to actually know the lie they're pulling over on us. And for goodness sakes, when Tricky Dick Cheney tells us the story, when he can be the one that tells us the truth, how bad is that? How freaking bad is that when Darth Cheney is able to tell us the truth and our own left can't do that? That is just pathetic. And it drives me bonkers that we don't have people looking out for us. Now, the MMT community, of course, is looking out for us. But we've had to cut through a bunch of bullshit too, because the centrist bullshit, the right-wing economic narratives, the fiscally conservative, socially liberal narrative is alive and well, wait for it, in the progressive community too. And that's where you get the faux-gressives. And that's where you start to understand that if you don't change this narrative, if you don't get on this bandwagon and you don't really get serious about changing it, they're going to sideline every single thing that we want. And it's going to be game over because we've got 11 years now, not 12. And I don't see anything bold coming out of these folks. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about it. And then I want you to take action. It doesn't do us any good to think we know the answers, think we know what we want, but then go back through and do some mind meld to somehow or another justify another milquetoast, moderate, centrist, garbage, trash, fiscally conservative, liberally social, nonsensical bullshit. A neoliberal. It does no good to pretend that that is good. And you need to understand that it is really, really not good. It's lethal. It's lethal. It's in our hands to do this, folks. Stop looking for a savior. Take it on yourself. Realize this is our mission. This is the problem that we've been presented. It may not be the problem you wanted to deal with, but it's the problem we've got to deal with to make progress. And when you see people talking about this stuff, you need to insert knowledge into that equation. You need to insert knowledge into that equation. Because I'm telling you right now, I'm in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez dank meme stash, and these folks in there are telling me all kinds of crazy shit that they call me a boomer. They're calling all kinds of crazy nonsense. Oh God, here come the MMT cultists. I mean, with friends like that, who the hell needs enemies, right? It's the grounds we've got to sweep. We got to clean that up. And maybe my voice isn't the one they're going to hear. Maybe it's your voice. Maybe you're the one that needs to reach them. Maybe you're the one that has to reach the lady that was in our inbox telling us, no thanks. If I have to try that hard, it must be a scam. Hard pass. Each one teach one's our motto here. And there's a reason for that. Everybody doesn't hear my voice and everybody doesn't hear your voice. It takes different voices to penetrate the thick skull. The thick, thick skull. Hold on, we've got it here. Let's see here. I'm going to put this up on the board because when I see stuff like this, I want to make sure I understand what they're saying. Hold on. Oh, wrong. Here it is. So she says, please tell me that you're not throwing weight behind Bernie for POTUS. All he'll do is lose and then ask all of us to vote for whatever neoliberal candidate they're going to coronate this time. My money's on Kamala for this round. So, Emily, let's talk about that for a minute. I think I've said probably about 40 times in this live stream, we can play a drinking game and count how many times I've said it, that I'm not talking about a candidate. I'm telling you that the job here is to teach people about the economic message, to make sure that we all understand that we can do great things. And I even went the distance and said that the Democratic Party has retained the right to change its rules on the spur of a moment. If progressives start making inroads, they can just change the rules. Now, I'm not telling you to dem enter or dem exit. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm telling you to follow your heart and do what you want. But you must understand that the narrative that we've got to fight, if you listen to anything I've said in the last hour, anything that I've said in the last hour, is that we can afford this stuff and we have to debunk the lie that we cannot. Otherwise, it won't matter who gets elected. You're going to be stuck with centrist bullshit. Now, whether I throw my weight behind Bernie or whether I throw it behind Tulsi or whether I throw it behind friggin' whoever, I'm throwing my weight behind the people that are fighting for modern monetary theory and that know how this shit works. I won't throw my weight behind somebody in the Green Party if they don't know MMT. I won't throw my weight behind somebody that doesn't understand economics. I will only throw my weight behind somebody who understands economics. Anybody that ignores economics, I ignore them. So that's the big to-do. I don't care about their party. If they don't understand economics, they are not worth a piece of used toilet paper in terms of supporting me and the big, bold agenda that I want to see passed. And if it's too hard to understand or it's a scam, chances are you're probably not on Team Steve, because Team Steve rolls with the kids that want to learn the shit. So Bernie happens to have Stephanie Kelton as his economic advisor. I'm not sure who these other people have as their economic advisor, but Stephanie Kelton is one of the developers of modern monetary theory. So you start doing the math and figure out, well, shoot, if I'm fighting for a movement and that movement is really about economic literacy so that the progressive movement can achieve the goals that it's got to achieve to be successful, then I'm not talking about just one candidate. I'm talking about an entire movement. And I'm talking about one key thing, and that is economics. Now, I will tell you from my perspective, when I see people running around and ignoring the economic message, it makes me sick inside. It makes a little piece of me die because people keep talking about dem enter, dem exit, this, that, don't go for him, don't go for her. And I'm saying, guys, stop the noise. Stay focused. Narrow that focus. Narrow the focus so that we can win. The only way to win is for us to really all truly know that we can afford this stuff and demand it, insist that we have it. And it won't matter who gets elected. Now, I'm telling you, I'm not here to tell you who I'm voting for, who I'm not voting for. I'm here to tell you the key to all this is destroying the neoliberal fiscal conservatism of the centrist moderate, who's going to tell you that we've got to raise taxes, who's going to tell you that we can't afford these things, who's going to be like Hillary and laugh and say it's pie in the sky, who's going to pat us on the head and call us basement dwellers that just don't understand. And I'm here to tell you, I would love to go toe-to-toe with the shill, the little imp. And I would love to talk to her about economics. Now, I will tell you, she knows an awful lot because she really does know this stuff. She's not some passive person here. She gets it. And that makes her complicit. That makes her even more evil. I'm trying to tell you, right, wrong, or indifferent, regardless of which candidate you go for. You don't have to pick or choose which candidate. I'm here to tell you the economic message matters just as much to Tulsi as it should to Bernie, as it should to anybody else you might support. Policies, not personalities. Policies, not parties. Policies, policies, policies. Truth. That's what we've got to be striving for. And it's real easy because I know it's fun to campaign for people. It's fun to get excited and hold signs up and wear cute shirts and take selfies with your friends and stuff like that. I know it's fun. Hold pom-poms. It's great. It's great fun. But I'm telling you, nothing's going to change if we don't address the people that say, one last time just for ending the show, no thanks. If I have to try that hard, it must be a scam. Hard pass. All right, friends, that's it. I'm going to leave you with Dick Cheney, and I'm going to say have a good night. Sad that Darth Vader here, Darth Cheney, has got it more than we do. Have a good night, everybody.